Jai Shri Guru. Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Bande Gurashi Charanaravinam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Bande Gurashi Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Bande Gurushi Charanaravrindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu ki Romancha Kampasu Taranga Baju Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramarjanado Shri Vigrahara Shringaratan Juktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatopi Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Tapi Bande Gurashi Charan Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasado Satana Truptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasado Satana Truptan Hari Bhakta Kritvaiva Trupti Bhajata Sadeva Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Shiradhikama Gavayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Shri Radhika Madhura Lila Pratikshana Danalalupasya Bande Gurashi Charanaravindam Bande Gurashi Charanaravindam Ne Kunjayono Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Bhir Joktir Apekshaneya Ne Kunjayono Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Bhir Joktir Tatrati Daksha Atibalavasya Bande Gurashi Charanaravindam Atibalavasya Bande Gurashi Sakshat Haritena Shamasta Shashre Rukta Tathava Bataiva Sadhavi Sakya Haritena Shashre Kintu Prabharja Priya Eva Tasya Bande Gurashi Charanaravindam Bande Gurashi Charanaravindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasadam Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Dayam Stubam Tasya Yasatrin Sandhyam Bande Gurashi Charanaravindam Bande Gurashi Charanaravindam Dayam Stuvam Tasya Yasatrin Sandhyam Bande Gurashi Charanaravindam Shri Charana Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatare Shatarine Namaste Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatare Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Jaya Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavi Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hariyaraye Namah, Krishna Jadavaye Namah, Jadavaye Madhavaya Kesavaye Namah, Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Bol. Shri Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman, Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Pramanande, Hari, Haribo, Jai Vishwapar Paramsa Prabhajakacharya Suttara Sri Shishimad Divine Grace, Abhay Tarvina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Pratishtha Vibhiti Samasta Bhakkacharya, Vaishnav Siramani Patita Pavana, Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Gaura Guru Varga Patita Udhar Ki Jai, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattara Gunath Shiva Gopala Bhatta Das Gunasat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai, Ananta Kur Vishna Vrindi Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai, Jai Param Dayal Se Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Prema Nama Sankirtane Ka Janaka, Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandana Shriman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavrinaya Avatar Ki Jai, गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरिनाम संकीर्तन जग की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहद ट्रांसलेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। शिष्य राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपना राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रजबम वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय। देलोशिव शिष्य राधा नीलमाधव की जय। सिमायपुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर सिंहरे भगवान की जय। जगंगा माय जमुना माय की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंदी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories, all glories, all glory to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Hari Hari Bol. Namaste Narasingaya. Namaste Narasingaya. Pralada la da da aine. Pralada la da da aine. Hiranyakasipu Vaksham. Hiranyakasipu Vaksham. Silatankanakalaye. Jaya Silatankanakalaye. Ito Nishingo Parato Nishingam. Jato jato jami tato nisingam. Bahir nisingam, Hrudaye nisingam. Narasingam adimi sharanam prapade. Tava kara kamala vare naka adbhuta singha dalita hiranyakashipu tanabringa kesavadrita narahari rupa jai jagadisha re. Jai Jagadisha Re. Jai Jagadisha Re. Tava kara kamala vare naka adbhuta singha dalita hiranyakasipu tanabringa kesavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Kesavadruta Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Kesavadrita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jaya Nisingade Jaya Nisingade Nrisingade Jaya Nisingade Jaya Narahari Jaya Narahari Narahari Jaya Narahari Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Prahlad Maharaj Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo जय श्री श्री भक्ति पता सर्वविघ्नाशना करे सिंहरे भगवान की जय जय भक्त श्रेष्ठ प्रहलाद महाराज की जय निताय गौरारी प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि ओम Shri Brindai Tulasi Bai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satabhaktaye Namo Namaha Brindai Tulasi Bai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satabhaktaye Namo Namaha Brindaya Tulasi Devai Priyaya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satabhaktaye Namo Namaha Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Tulasi Krishna Preyasina Monamaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasina Radha Krishna Seva Pava Hey Abhilasi Radha Krishna Seva Pava Hey Abhilasi Jetomara Sharanala Tahara Vanchapo No Kripa Kori Korotore Vrindavanavasi Tumi kripa kari koratore Vrindavanavasi Morai Yobhila Vilas Kunje Diyova Nayane Vivo Sada Jugala Ruparasi Amin Eni Vedanadhara Sakhirayano Gatakara Sevayadi Kora Diye Koroni Jadasi Dina Krishna Dase ko Eye Namora Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaye Navasi Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaye Navasi Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namo Yanika Nisha Papani Brahma Hatari Kanisha Tani Tani Prana Santi Pradakshina Pare Pare Yani Kanisha Papane Brahma Tari Kanisha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pare Pare Yani Kanisha Papani Brahmatari Kanisha Tani Tani Pranasanti Pradakshina Pari Pari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Brinda Devi Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Brinda Devi Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo Jai Srimati Tulsi Maharani Brinda Devi Ki Jai Shri Vrindai Tulasi Vai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shrutavataye Namo Namaha Vrindai Tulasi Vai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shrutavataye Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha Jai Srimati Tulasi Maharani Brinda Devi Ki Jai Jai Tulsi Maharani O Tulsi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence, pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of carry damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays May I always swim in love with Shri Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Darpanamarjanam Bhavamada Vagni Nirvapanam Shreyakari Vachandika Vitaranam Vidya Vadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Jayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Arpita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Itadrushi Tava Kripaya Bhagavan Mama Api Durdhaivam Idrishamya Janina Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sada Hari Nadhanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagari Shakamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavatar Bhaktira Itukitwai Ainandatanuja Kinkaram Paritamam Vishame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tava Padapankaja Titaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shudaraya Bhajanam Gadu Gira Kurakarin Chitam Bapukada Tavanama Grahane Bhavisati
Yugayitam Nimesena
Chakshusa Prabhusayitam Shunyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Vidahiname Aslishava Padaratam Pinastumam Adashanam Mamhatam Karotuva Chatatata Bhavidadatu Lampato Matpranatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam Ki Jai.
Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to the living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen to this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy names? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in a world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Saksastakam Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityananda. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Prasthaya Nirvisesa Srinivasa Paskati Listana.
There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1.
To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord.
2.
To consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the names of Lord Vishnu.
3.
To disobey the orders of the spiritual master.
4.
To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature in pursuance of the Vedic version.
5.
To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination.
6.
To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord.
7.
To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord.
8.
To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are often in the Vedas as fruit of activities of karma kanda.
9.
To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name.
And 10.
To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desire to express Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripasindubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Prasthaya. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Om Akanyati Mirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Sapritam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pachikamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Visakha Nimitam Sa Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namini Shri Varsavana Devi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhakti Da Shri Guru Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastute Namaste Guruvani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Sakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralamba Rasambode Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitanandanamine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Vir Baba Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Sri Jagannatayate Namaha Vanchakalpaturabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurichase Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Jayatam Surator Bangur Mamamanda Mater Gati Matsarva Swapadambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadramadaha Shrimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shrimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastadi Bihi Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasa Rambivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswaner Gopir Gopinatak Striyesturna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhe Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vrite Susurabhi Rabhipaliantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrama Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kwanantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamalya Vamse Ratnam Gadam Pranaya Keli Kala Vilasam Shamanti Bangalalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayuvanam Cha Vedesa Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Muni Pungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichinti Tatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatum Jagadanda Koti Yes Jakti Rasti Ganda Chaya Yadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayanta Rastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Bhavita Dio Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabis Tabirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hidesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Amenatistan Nanavatara Makarod Bhuvanesu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagaranda Koti Koti Svasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalamanantam Saisa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Try Gunya Tad Vishaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sadvava Bambi Chora Sapvam Gutragavan Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Ya Praninam Pratifalam Smaratam Upetya Leela Yatena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chitasya Devi Mahesu Haridama Sutesu Te Te Prabhava Nichaya Vihitasya Yena Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shisti Stati Pralaya Sada Vasakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Ichana Rupam Abhyasya Chachesta Tesa Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Etu Yasambhutam Apitata Samapaitikar Yat Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Deeparchadeva Hitasantanam Abhyapetya Deepayate Vivita Hetu Sanam Dharma Yastad Eva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narna Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidram Mananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupa Adhara Saktim Avalamya Param Swarutim Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadandanata Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kala Viseso Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Baswanya Tasma Sakalesu Nijesu Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitad Vadatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidanu Karta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha Dvande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagatrayasya Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahiga Ganamambu Marudisascha Kalastavatma Manasiti Jagatrayami Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschaksuresa Savita Sakala Grahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Sutayasta Pamsi Brahmadi Kita Patagava Dayascha Jiva Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrindra Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma Bandhanu Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdhati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Biti Vatsalya Moha Guru Gaurava Sevya Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Sadvisimtana Mapurete Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriyakanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Dramabhumis Chintamani Ganama Yitoyam Amritam Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apivamsi Priyasaki Chidanandam Jyoti Param Apitala Swadyam Apicha Sayatra Shiradi Bhishavati Shirabi Bhyasta Sumahan Nime Sardakyo Rajati Nahiyatra Pisamaya Bhaje Svita Dvipam Tamaham Iha Golakamiti Yam Vidantaste Santak Siti Virachara Katipaya Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Shri Guru Vastika prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I, from my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. It's an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. I offer my most humble obeisances unto the lotus feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10. Verse 44. Ittam Ravena Katayito Bhagavan Bhagavatama netam bhavena hi param drastum arhat suraya arhanti suraya itam, in these features, bhavena, the matter of creation and destruction, katita, described, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Bhagavatama, by the great transcendentalist, na, not, itam, in this, bhavena, features, he, only, param, most glorious, drastum, to see, arhanti, deserve, suraya, great devotees. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The great transcendentalists thus describe the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the pure devotees deserve to see more glorious things in transcendence beyond these features. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Lord is not only the creator and destroyer of the material manifestations of His different energies. He is more than a simple creator and destroyer, for there, in His feature of Ananda, or His pleasure feature, for there is His feature of Ananda, or His pleasure feature. This pleasure feature of the Lord is understood by the pure devotees only, and not by others. The impersonalist is satisfied simply by understanding the all-pervasive influence of the Lord. This is called Brahman Realization. Greater than the impersonalist is the mystic, who sees the Lord situated in his heart as Paramatma, the partial representation of the Lord. But there are pure devotees who take part in the direct pleasure, Ananda, potency of the Lord by factual reciprocation of loving service. The Lord, in His abode called the Vaikuntha planets, which are eternal manifestations, always remains with His associates and enjoys transcendental loving services by His pure devotees in different transcendental humors. The pure devotees of the Lord thus undergo a practice of that devotional service to the Lord during the manifestation of the creation and take full advantage of the manifestation by qualifying themselves to enter into the kingdom of God. The Bhagavad Gita 18:55 confirms this. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyaschasmi tatvata. Tato mam tatvato gyatva vishitetad anantaram. By development of pure devotional service, one can factually know the Lord as He is, and thus be trained in the bona fide service of the Lord, and be allowed to enter into the direct association of the Lord in so many ways, in so many capacities. The highest glorious association with the Lord is made possible in the planet of Goloka Vrindavana, where Lord Krishna enjoys himself with the gopis and his favorite animals, the Surabi cows. A description of this transcendental land of Krishna is given in the Brahma Samhita, which is considered by Lord Sri Chaitanya to be the most authentic literature in this connection. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The great transcendentalists thus describe the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the pure devotees deserve to see more glorious things in transcendence beyond these features. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So there is something beyond creation and destruction. There's a transcendental, what you would call the Brahma Bhuta, the transcendental state of transcendental bliss in the spiritual world. And when it says that, I'm sorry, it's not Brahma Bhuta, it's Ananda Bhuta, the transcendental state of living in relationship with Krishna. The Brahma Bhuta is the conditioned state of the living entity in the material world. So the devotees are aiming at the Ananda Bhuta, the transcendental state of ecstatic, blissful pastimes with the Lord. This is unknown to the Mayavadis. This is unknown to the mystic yogis or the followers of Patanjali. They have a little inkling of it, but it's not sustainable for them usually. But the devotees, they have full realization of this, of the transcendental bliss in association with the Lord, and performing direct bhakti yoga or direct devotion to the Lord. So they practice this in the material world, and then they qualify themselves to go back to Godhead and to experience this eternally in the spiritual world with no interruptions. Like in the material world, there's always going to be some interruption. But in the spiritual world, it's uninterrupted transcendental bliss. So there's a gradual elevation called Brahmapucham Pratistha. That is, different levels of realization of God. So it begins with what's called Ana Maya. Now, it's not Maya, but it's Ana Maya, the state of realizing God in the form of food. And that, like right in the beginning of life, the baby right away is seeking the mother's breast. And when it receives the milk from the mother's breast, the baby is very satisfied. When the baby is not satisfied, the baby starts crying, and then the mother comes and soothes the baby by giving her breast, and then the baby drinking the milk becomes very happy. Sometimes they even fall asleep drinking the milk because they're happy and they're satisfied. So that realization of God in the form of food is anamoya. Then the second stage is pranamoya, where the living symptoms of the mother or the father or uncle is perceived by the baby. They're walking, talking, and doing different things. So these living symptoms the baby becomes aware of it. Then there's the manamoya, and that is beyond the living symptoms of walking, talking, and so forth. There's mental thinking, feeling, and willing stage of realization. And then beyond that is vijnanamoya, where one begins to distinguish or see the difference between the body and the soul, and becomes aware of the existence of the soul. And above that, it's called anandamaya. That is, one begins to experience in the association of Krishna through devotional service, transcendental bliss. So that is the real goal of the devotee, to have this uninterrupted, sustained transcendental bliss in association with the Lord. You can only do that through devotional service or bhakti yoga. Therefore, Prabhupada quotes the verse, Bhaktya mam abhijananti yavanyas chasmi tattvata tato mam tattvato yakva vishitetad anantaram. By development of pure devotional service, one can factually know the Lord as He is, and thus be trained in the bona fide service of the Lord, and be allowed to enter into the direct association of the Lord in so many capacities. The highest glorious association with the Lord is made possible in the planet of Goloka Vrindavana, where Lord Krishna enjoys Himself with the gopis and His favorite animals, the Surabi cows. A description of this transcendental land of Krishna is given in the Brahma Samhita, which is considered by Lord Sri Chaitanya to be the most authentic literature in this connection. So, in the Brahma Samhita, when it says Shriya Kanta Kanta Paramapurusha Kalpatarvo, By the way, let's look up the translation of that in English. Look up Brahma Samhita and go to that verse, which is what? Which is not quite, not the end of the Brahma Samhita, but going toward the end. Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Drama Bhumis Chintamani Ganam Aitoyam Amritam Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasaki Chidanandam Jyoti Param Apitad Asvadyam Apicha Sayatra Shiradi Bihi Sravati Shirabi Vyascha Sumaha Nime Sardakyuva Rajati Nahi Yatrapi Samaya Bhaje Svita Dvipam Tamaham Iha Golokamitiyam Vidantaste Santakshiti Viralakshara Katipaya. What's it say? What's the translation?
So the translation is, I worship that transcendental seat known as Svetadvipa, whereas loving consorts, the Lakshmis, in their unalloyed spiritual essence, practice the amorous service of the Supreme Lord Krishna as their only lover, where every tree is a transcendental purpose tree, where the soil is the purpose gem, all water is nectar, every word is a song, and every gait is a dance. The flute is the favorite attendant, effulgence is full of transcendental bliss, and the supreme spiritual entities are all enjoyable and tasty, where numberless milk cows always emit transcendental ocean of milk, where there is eternal existence of transcendental time, which is ever present and without past or future, and hence is not subject to the quality of passing away even for the space of half a moment. That realm is known as Goloka only to a very few self-realized souls in the world.
In this world, yeah. See, that's a description of the spiritual transcendental blissful state of Ananda Maya. It's not Maya, it's Ananda Maya, right? And this is only appreciated by devotees. Like we say, the Mayavadis, the mystic yogis, they can't experience this, because you can only experience it in direct devotional service to the Lord. And they're not. The mystic yogis, they can. It is possible for them to experience something of this, but the problem is, at the last moment when they realize Paramatma, they say, Tat Vamasi, that's me. And they merge into the body of Paramatma. Very few of them actually attain pure realization of Krishna and pure devotional service. So this is explained also when it says transcendental pleasure is the real goal of yoga and is easily achieved by devotional service. But it's very difficult to achieve by following Patanjali's yoga system, and it's impossible to achieve by the Mayavad philosophy, right? Or Mayavad path. And this Anandamaya Vyasat that is explained in the Vishnu Purana, I think, 1.1.12, it has a counterpoint, a similar point, or similar phrase is used by Patanjali, where he says, Chitti Shaktir, which means transcendental pleasure is the real life of the yogi. So this is also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 6th chapter. So you have these concurrences in the different scriptures. Unfortunately, though, it's not fully understood by the followers of Patanjali. it is possible to be understood, but most of the time they miss the real understanding. So, therefore, it's said, Prabhupada explains this in chapter 6 and verses 20 to 23. So, in verse 21 or 20. Okay, so anyway, in one of those verses, between 20 and 23, Prabhupada explains in the purport, he says, by practice of yoga, one becomes gradually detached from material concepts. This is the primary characteristic of the yoga principle. And after this, one becomes situated in trance or samadhi, which means that the yogi realizes the supersoul through transcendental mind and intelligence without any of the misgivings of identifying the self with the superself. In other words, identifying oneself as God. Yoga practice is more or less based on the principles of the Patanjali system. Some unauthorized commentators try to identify the individual soul with the supersoul. So that's tatvamasi, I am that, right? So this is preached by unauthorized commentators. But they do not understand the real purpose of the Patanjali system of yoga. There is an acceptance of transcendental pleasure in the Patanjali system, but the monists do not accept this transcendental pleasure out of fear of jeopardizing the theory of oneness. So you see, the Mayavadis cannot accept the experience of transcendental bliss because that would mean that they're a person. But they want to merge into the non-entity of Brahman. So they rejected this feeling of transcendental bliss. But the monists do not accept this transcendental pleasure out of fear of jeopardizing the theory of oneness. The duality of knowledge and knower is not accepted by the non-dualist. But in this verse, transcendental pleasure, realized through transcendental senses, is accepted. So the Bhagavad Gita verse, verses 20 to 23, does talk about this transcendental bliss, or Anandamaya Bhyasat, where it says, this perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. That means seeing the soul. When it says seeing the self, it's understanding I'm not this body, I'm the soul. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Okay, so that's 21 and 22, where that's being said. 6, 21 and 22, where it says, Lam yam labva chaparam labham manyate nadikam tata yasmin stito na dukena guru na pivichalyate. So that's where is that said? Sukam Adyantikam. Okay. So, Yam Ladva, by attaining this position of transcendentalness, the yogi thinks this is the greatest achievement. And he's no longer situated in the state of miseries. He's never shaken in his determination to continue in in relationship to the Lord. So established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there's no greater gain. Right. So, therefore, in the verse before that, that's 21, Sukham Aidyantikam Yatat, it says, this perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. That means understanding the soul as opposed to the body. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through the transcendental senses. So this is the real practice of yoga. That means that you come to the state of devotional service. First of all, you realize the difference between the body and the soul. So that's Vijnanamaya. And then, when you understand that you're not this body, you're the soul, you begin to experience Anandamaya, transcendental happiness, and by rendering devotional service to Krishna and Radha and Krishna. So it says, the sum and substance is that all variegatedness of this mundane world and much more variety over and above the mundane are to be found in Goloka, in the spiritual world. The variety in the transcendental world is fully centralized, whereas in the mundane world it is not so, and hence productive of weal and woe. In other words, everything is centralized in Krishna, but in the material world it's all spread out all over the place, and instead of having transcendental bliss, you have weal and woe. This is more like Old English. It's just, you have a lot of work, a lot of efforts, and the result of all that is simply misery, right? Because it's not one's consciousness is not centered on serving Krishna. It's centered on serving oneself, or serving family members or relatives, or serving country, or serving this or serving that. So therefore, it's a lot of work, but it just results in woe, a lot of misery. Right? And then he says, the variety in the transcendental world is fully centralized, whereas in the mundane world it is not so, and hence productive of weal. Weal means not W-H-E-E-L, it's W-E-A-L. You can look at, this is Old English, you can look it up, the word weal, W-E-A-L. And
Some welt or like a red swollen mark left on the flesh by blow or pressure, some kind of blow.
Yeah. Does it say anything else?
That's
Does it say
like in the medicinal terms, it's an area of skin in which temporarily some either reddening or raised skin.
Does it say anything else?
No.
Huh? Yes.
The phrase wail and woe means both in times of happiness and success, and in times of sadness and difficulty.
Can mean both things?
Yeah, wail and woe, W-O-E.
Wheel, not whale. Wheel. Wheel and woe.
Wheel, W-H-E-A-L, that's also.
No, W-E-A-L.
W-E-A-L.
W-E-A-L. So read it again.
Phrase wail and woe means both in times of happiness and success, and in times of sadness and difficulty.
Does it say anything else?
Another meaning is a sound.
What?
Sound.
What?
Sound. S-O-U-N-D.
Yes.
This is the meaning. It says sound or healthy or prosperous state.
Oh, sound. Sound doesn't mean sound. It means in a healthy body.
Yeah. Sound, healthy or prosperous state.
Prosperous state. Not prosperous, but prosperous state.
Prosperous state.
Weal and woe? Okay.
When I searched for what does wheel and woe mean,
Yeah.
it's well-being, prosperity, or happiness. That's the definition that is given.
It doesn't say anything about misery?
The wheel part is the happiness, and then the oo is the misery.
That's
Yes.
the point. Yeah. Okay, so Prabhupada says, the oneness with the Supreme is called Kaivalyam by the monist. But according to Patanjali, this Kaivalyam is an internal or transcendental potency by which the living entity becomes aware of his constitutional position. In the words of Lord Chaitanya, this state of affairs is called Cheto Darpana Marjanam, or clearance of the impure mirror of the mind. This clearance is actually liberation, or Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. The theory of Nirvana, also preliminary, corresponds with this principle. In the Bhagavatam 2.10.6, this is called Swarupena Vyavastiti. The Bhagavad Gita also confirms this situation in this verse. So what did Prabhupada do in this purport? He's connecting Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, the Shiksastakam of Lord Chaitanya, and Patanjali's correct understanding of the word Kaivalyam as opposed to the Mayavadis' wrong understanding of it. So the Mayavadis, they say, this Chitti Shakti or internal potency is transcendental. Purushartha means material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and at the end, the attempt to become one with the Supreme. This oneness with the Supreme is called Kaivalyam by the monists. That's the Mayavadis, right? But, according to Patanjali, this Kaivalyam is an internal or transcendental potency by which the living entity becomes aware of his constitutional position. That means aware of his relationship with Krishna as servant and Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the words of Lord Chaitanya, this state of affairs is called Cheto Darpana Marjanam, in other words, cleansing the mirror of the mind, or clearance of the impure mirror of the mind. This clearance is actually liberation, or Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. So, when we realize that I'm not this body, I'm a pure soul, and my soul is part and parcel of Krishna, that's who I really am. And in relationship with Krishna, I begin to experience, in relationship of devotional service with Krishna, I begin to experience transcendental bliss. That's who I really am, right? And then it says that it connects this with the Chaitanya's Shiksastakam, and also with Buddhism, where he says the theory of nirvana, also preliminary, corresponds with this principle. In other words, the mind is no longer, let's say, distracted. It focuses completely on its relationship with all the distractions are taken away, and the nirvana means it should be fixed. It should be fixed on Krishna, but the Buddhists misunderstand that. So in other words, Prabhupada is correcting here the Mayavadis, the Patanjali followers, the Buddhists, and therefore he says in the Bhagavatam, this is called Swarupena Vyavastiti. The Bhagavad Gita also confirms this situation in this verse. In other words, one can become purified of the false ego identifying with the body, and instead identify with the soul and the soul's eternal relationship with Krishna, the super soul or supreme soul, and then realization of this Ananda Maya, or transcendental bliss, engaging in devotional service for the pleasure of the Lord. After nirvana, or material cessation, there is the manifestation of spiritual activities, or devotional service to the Lord, known as Krishna consciousness. In the words of the Bhagavatam, Swarupena Vyavastiti, this is the real life of the living entity. Maya, or illusion, is the condition of spiritual life contaminated by material infection. Liberation from this material infection does not mean destruction of the original eternal position of the living entity. Patanjali also accepts this by his words, Kaivalyam Swarupa Patista Va Chitti Shakti Iti. This Chitti Shakti, or transcendental pleasure, is real life. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra 1.1.12 as Anandamayo Vyasat. This natural transcendental pleasure is the ultimate goal of yoga and is easily achieved by execution of devotional service or bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga will be vividly described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. In the yoga system, as described in this chapter, there are two kinds of samadhi, called sampragyata samadhi and asampragyata samadhi. When one becomes situated in the transcendental position by various philosophical researches, he is said to have achieved sampragyata samadhi. In the asampragyata samadhi, there is no longer any connection with mundane pleasure, for one is then transcendental to all sorts of happiness derived from the senses. When the yogi is once situated in that transcendental position, he is never shaken from it. Unless the yogi is able to reach this position, he is unsuccessful. Today's so-called yoga practice, which involves various sense pleasures, is contradictory. A yogi indulging in sex and intoxication is a mockery. Even those yogis who are attracted by the siddhis, perfections, in the process of yoga are not perfectly situated. If yogis are attracted by the byproducts of yoga, then they cannot attain the stage of perfection as stated in this verse. Persons, therefore, indulging in the make-show practice of gymnastic feats or siddhis should know that the aim of yoga is lost in that way. Wow. The best practice of yoga in this age is Krishna consciousness, which is not baffling, not confusing mundane things with spiritual things. A Krishna conscious person is so happy in his occupation that he does not aspire after any other happiness, meaning like mundane happiness. There are many impediments, especially in this age of hypocrisy, to practicing Hatha Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. But there is no such problem in executing Karma Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. As long as the material body exists, one has to meet the demands of the body, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. But a person who is in pure Bhakti Yoga or in Krishna consciousness does not arouse the senses while meeting the demands of the senses. Rather, he accepts the bare necessities of life, making the best use of a bad bargain, and enjoys transcendental happiness in Krishna consciousness. He is callous toward incidental occurrences. In other words, he's not disturbed by setbacks or difficulties or suffering. He's callous, meaning it doesn't affect him. And then he says, he is callous toward incidental occurrences such as accidents, disease, scarcity, and even the death of a most dear relative. But he is always alert to execute his duties in Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga. Accidents never deviate him from his duty, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 2.14. Agama pa yano nityas tamstatiksha svabharata. He endures all such incidental occurrences because he knows that they come and go and do not affect his duties. In this way, he achieves the highest perfection in yoga practice. This is an amazing purport by Prabhupada. And he corrects the misunderstandings in the practice of yoga, and he credits Patanjali as having correctly explained the goal of yoga, but Patanjali's followers have misinterpreted everything. And this is something that happens all the time. It's even happened in ISKCON, that with the passage of time, people think that they have the license to change the words of the Acharya and then spew out different meanings of what was written by the Acharya. And that's happened to Patanjali. It's happened somewhat even in Krishna consciousness. So we have to be very careful about that. So here Prabhupada is correcting all these misunderstandings in Patanjali Yoga, in Mayavad philosophy, and also in and shows how Patanjali actually is bona fide, but his process of attaining this transcendental state of samadhi is arduous, it's difficult. Right? Whereas Krishna consciousness is direct connection to Krishna, and it's actually easy. Right? If you follow it sincerely, it's actually very easy. Right away you begin to feel transcendental pleasure. This Chitti Shakti, which is something in the last stages of the Patanjali Yoga system, is experienced right away in Krishna consciousness through Harinam Sankirtan and chanting the Mahamantra Hare Krishna and tasting prasadam and respecting it and hearing the transcendental narrations of the Lord's pastimes. One begins to experience right away. Especially, see, it's very important that we come to the Sunday feast on time at 5 o'clock and participate in it. I mean, the whole congregation should be here. And then when new people walk in, they're shocked. But see, all the devotees stay away, and they only come maybe for the last part of the kirtan around 7:30 or 7:45. And that's a mistake. The people should come in and see the whole place filled with devotees who are ardently and reverently chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And and dancing and joyful. That will change everything. But usually nobody comes at that time, or very few people come at that time, very few devotees. Okay, they can say, well, I have an excuse, I have a service. But not everybody has a service at that time. And so the temple room should be filled with devotees reverently and with full concentration, chanting the holy name and dancing in ecstasy. And that will immediately attract the attention of the people that come here. And then ardently hearing the class and participating in it by asking questions. And then when people experience this, they say, wow, this is something extraordinary. I learned so much, and I never experienced this in any other temple. Well, one place where you do experience it, besides Hare Krishna temples, is if you go to Jaipur and go to the Radha Govinda temple there. Right, 4 o'clock in the morning, people are jogging, but not for health. They're running as fast as they can to make sure they're on time for Mangala Aarti. When I went there, I was walking toward the temple, and people were running past me like anything. Women, old people, young kids, and men. They were running, and as soon as the kirtan started, and the curtains opened, it was the most ecstatic experience. Everyone's jumping up and down ecstatically, and just the Radha Govinda, the original deities of who was that? Opened the Radha Govinda temple. It was it Gopal Bhatta? I forget. Somebody, was it Shiva? Anyway, I'll think about it. I'll find out. Anyway, those deities were taken away from Vrindavan when the Muslims invaded Vrindavan and taken to Jaipur, where they were protected by a king. And it's one of the most I'm sure it's still going on today the same way. It's one of the most ecstatic experiences to see such an enthusiastic arti. And it doesn't stop. It goes on for like 3/4 of an hour to 1 hour, where there's ecstatic dancing and people are shouting and chanting as loud as they can and jumping up and down. And you can see how much they have love for Radha Govinda. Well, you can experience this in ISKCON temples too, but we should experience it in this temple, right? And it should start by 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday and go on till 8:30. And anyone walking in will be amazed by the enthusiasm of the devotees. Of course, if you don't have any enthusiasm, how can you express it, right? But if you regularly come to the programs, especially the classes, that enthusiasm is built up, and then it just explodes on the Sunday, and also on Sankirtan. Okay, so therefore, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, there is a hidden meaning of the proposition, even the supreme, that is also nevertheless the object of enjoyment. Param apitad asvadyam apicha. The word param, api, indicates that Sri Krishna is the only truth absolute in all the transcendental blissful principles. And tad asvadyam api means his object of enjoyment. The glory of Radha's love for Krishna, tasty quality rasa of Krishna that is realized by Radha, and the bliss of which Radha is conscious in the process of such realization, all these threefold bhavas, emotional entities, becoming available for enjoyment by Krishna, he attains his personality of Sri Gaura Sundara. It is also this that constitutes the transcendental bliss of the delicious loving rasa service manifested by Sri Gaura Sundara. This also eternally exists only in the self-same Svetadvip, in other words, in Goloka Vrindavan. So you can get a feeling of what Goloka is like by these words, the way Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is using all these different words. There's a sweetness, there's an enchantment, there is a seductive appeal when you see and hear the love of devotees expressed for Krishna. And he says, the sum and substance of it is that all the variegatedness of this mundane world and much more variety over and above the mundane are to be found in Goloka. So, our temple should be a little experience of Goloka Vrindavan. But you can only do that through enthusiastic kirtan, chanting and dancing and expressing our love through this chanting and dancing. Love for Krishna and Prabhupada. Jai Haribol. So, are there any questions?
So Maharaj, I think at the beginning you mentioned that there is the Ananda Bhuta and Brahma Bhuta is more of a condition.
Yeah, Brahma Bhuta.
But in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 54th verse, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na sochati na kankshati, there it seems to be referring the Brahma Bhuta to the liberated soul.
Okay. I might have made a mistake. Let's see here. Let me see where I got my notes. Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasochitina kanksati samaksarve subhute sumad bhaktim lapate param. Okay, so that is 54th verse. Yeah, you're correct. And did I say Brahmabhuta, or what should have said?
Is it, I think? I think there is another verse, another word for kind of the material body.
Okay, no, it's Jiva Bhuta.
Ah, Jiva Bhuta.
Jiva Bhuta means I am this body. And Brahma Bhuta, yes, you're correct. I mixed them up. Brahma Bhuta means I am Brahman. I am part and parcel of Krishna. And my duty changes when you realize that. One becomes Aham Brahmasmi. I'm not this body. I'm the spirit soul. Okay, so it's Jiva Bhuta.
Yep.
I mixed them up. Thank you very much for pointing that out.
Thank
Jiva Bhuta is the conditioned living entity. All living entities are Krishna's eternal fragment, struggling with the senses and the mind. So that's the Jiva Bhuta, as opposed to Brahma Bhuta. But actually, I was talking about the Anandamaya.
Brahmapucham.
Yeah, Brahmapucham, yeah. I mixed the things up. So thank you. Hare Krishna. Any other questions? Okay, so then we'll... No, Ananda Bhuta is you're experiencing transcendental bliss.
Anandamaya.
Anandamaya, yeah, Anandamaya.
So there's 5 koshas, right? That's what. Yeah.
Okay, Bhuta refers to the living entity. Let's look at the word up. It says,
Yeah, there's some reference here. We are now Jiva Bhuta. Jiva Bhuta means we are the same living entities, but somehow or other we have come in contact with this material nature. So that is Jiva Bhuta. And then when it is cleansed, then it is called Brahma Bhuta.
right. Yeah, so I think Bhuta is referring to a living entity, living being.
Yeah, Bhuta is a living entity, but either we are in the conditioned state or in the liberated
Right.
state.
Okay. So Jiva Bhuta is conditioned. Brahma Bhuta is purified. Good. Any other questions? No, in the material world. No, you're talking about Jiva Loka now or Jiva Bhuta? They can be, yeah. Yes. Yes. In Isha Upanishad is also the Atma Bhuta. And in Isha Upanishad, 7th verse, let me see if I can remember it. Okay, anyway, let's have Aarti. We can discuss this later. Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmeva bhut. So atmeva bhut. Yeah, Janata. It's atma bhut.
Somewhere I just go. Atma Bhuta means personal associates, apparently, of the Lord. I think.
Personal associates of the Lord?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is in Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya Leela 728.
No, but look, you have to look in the Ishopanishad, 7th mantra.
Seventh mantra.
See what it says there. Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmeva bhut vijanataha tatra ko mahakaha sukha ekatvam anupasyataha. What's it say? You'll have to go the word for word. Atma bhuta. Atma bhuta, basically it's the same thing as Brahma bhuta.
Atmaiva Abhut. No, I think this is Atmaiva Abhut. That is Atma Eva Abhut. That's not Atma Bhuta.
Is that the 7th?
Yeah, 7th verse. The way it is broken here, word by word, is.
Eva hakarmani jijiva chekchitam. No.
No, this is Yasmin Sarvani Bhut.
Yasmin sarvani bhutani.
Atmaiva Abhut.
Atmaiva bhut. So what does that mean right there?
So Atma, it's broken into 3 words. Atma, which is the spiritual spark. Eva means only. Abhut means exists as. So that is Atma Eva Abhut is combined as Atma Eva Abhut. So it's not a single word, it looks like.
So Brahma bhuta, you realize that you're a Brahman, you're not the body. So Atma bhuta is probably the same thing. Well, don't look at the word for word now. Now look at the translation. What does it say?
So the translation says, one who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks, in quality one with the Lord, becomes a true knower of things. What then can be the illusion or anxiety for him?
Yeah, so this is basically Atma bhuta, Brahma bhuta mean the same thing.
Same, yeah.
Haribol. Where's the Prabhupada? You want to chant? Then there's the word bhutas, which means ghost.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Bando Mohi Savadhana Mate
Bando Mui Savadana Mate
যাহার প্রসাদে ভায়ে এ ভব তরিয়া যায় যাহার
Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai
কৃষ্ণ প্রাপ্তি হয় যাহা আইতে
Krishna Prapti Oya Oite
গুরু মুখ পদ্মা বাক্য চিতেতে করিয়া আইকা
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Goriya
আর না করি হো মনে আশা
Arna Goriya Mane Asa
শ্রী গুরু চরণে রতি এই সে উত্তম গতি
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Udamagati
যে প্রসাদে পুরে সর্ব আশা
E Prasade Pure Sarva Asa
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दान दिल जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
दिव्य ज्ञान दे प्रकाशितो
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जते म भक्ति जहाँ वेद गाय जहर चरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु गुरु करुणा सिंधु लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवाना हा प्रभु कोरो दया देह मोरे पाद छया प्रभु हा प्रभु कोरो दया देह मोरे पाद छया
प्रभु पूर्ण जया देह मोरे पाद जया
एबे जागुषु त्रिभुवाना
शक्ति भुवना
एबे जागुषु त्रिभुवाना
शक्ति भुवना
प्रभु पादोइलो शरणा प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय
प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा
जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा
जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा
नमः विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामीति नामिने नमः।
Pradaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine.
Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama
Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jayam Vishnupad, Paramahansa Pararajika Shasta Teresa Terashi, Shishimada's Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna, Chaitanya Pavanichananda Sri Dvaita Giradhar Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna, Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanand. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Radha. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavan Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharini Nirvise Sasunyavadi Paskatya Desaturni Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Guru Bhaktivinoda. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain to pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus feet.
Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic Brahman emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord of the master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. Take the shelter of the lotus